Welcome back to the show. I'm Ben Brashen, and we are lucky enough to have Jim Estrada joining us because, you know, when you do start looking beneath the surface of a house, there's nobody better than an inspector who has done 3,500 inspections over the last 10 years. Hello, Jim. How are you?
Excellent. How you doing, man?
Good. Well, welcome back.
Well, I'm glad to be back. You know, I was trying to think of a topic this week, and all I could come up with is with a four-letter word that starts with S, and all of a sudden it made me start to think about plumbing.
Uh-oh. Did you have some plumbing problems at your house there, Jim?
No, fortunately I didn't, but it was like sometimes coming up for a topic for the show, something different,
you know,
is always kind of fun.
There's so many pieces of a house, right? I mean, there's like
exactly.
I mean, from the windows to the walls, right? I mean, you have the roof to the foundation and everything in between. And you know, we're just lucky to have you here because you know a lot about all of them.
Well, that's kind of my job, is to try and know a lot about everything. Don't claim to know everything about anything. So anyway, in the plumbing aspect, though, there are a lot of different things that go into the plumbing. And when I think about plumbing in terms of what people should know, there are a lot of basics in terms of different types of pipes and stuff. And I'm not going to bore you with that information for a whole bunch, but there are plastic pipes, there are metal pipes. Galvanized plumbing is really old plumbing, okay? So if you're looking at a house with old galvanized plumbing, it's not going to be long before it needs to be replaced. Typically lasts about 40 to 50 years. So when you're thinking about plumbing and thinking about things in houses, you need to think about life expectancies because those are going to be up-and-coming expenses. Okay, copper plumbing, you're going to get a good 100 years out of, more than likely. Okay, the plastic plumbing that they're using today, now we had some in the 70s that had some real problems with different couplings called polybutylene, but the new plastic PEXs that we're using actually have life expectancies up to 200 years, but a cheap builder can actually buy stuff that will only last 20 years. So you kind of want to make sure you know what you're getting in those different types of pipes.
So when somebody goes out and they're looking at a house, I mean, it sounds to me like the plumbing may not be leaking yet, right? You may find your dream home and you look a little deeper and you're like, well, there is no water, so the plumbing must be okay if you were to just go look at it, if I were to go look at it, or, you know, the average person who doesn't look at plumbing every day. But it sounds like there are some pieces of this to look at, some fixtures or some materials that can really dictate how long that plumbing is going to last, and maybe what the future of that, the insides of that house are going to be doing.
Well, there's no question about that. Like I say, the plastic plumbing, they come with different connectors, and one of the things about the connectors is you need to make sure you have the right connectors on them, or they do actually blow apart inside of the walls. We actually had some drain pipes that were coming apart at the couplings, and fortunately that was not sold up here. It was down in Texas, and it was ugly when all the drain pipes start coming apart. Drain pipes, you know, as a general...
Definitely worse than the ones bringing the water in.
No question.
A little dirtier water.
No question. I talk with people about that all the time. A flood in your house is not really that big a deal. You can stand there and watch it go by. A fire is a big deal, but I always talk with people about the underneath side of the house when we have our drain pipes. I've been under houses where the shower was not connected for 7 years. The mound of soap that was underneath there was unbelievable. Fortunately, it wasn't terrible. But when you find
sounds nasty.
Yeah, well, it wasn't great. But if you find
it must not have smelled bad, right? It was all soap.
You know what? I have my mask on, so I don't smell nothing. But when I find a sewer line that's disconnected, and when you think about the plastic pipes that we're using now, they work great, but a lot of times they aren't supported properly, and especially for an earthquake. Plumbers typically do not support them to keep them from bouncing up in any fashion. And in an earthquake, they can actually snap up, and then they just ooze out sewage for a few years before your house is condemned. So water pipes, when they break, you know about it. You get a big water bill, you see water everywhere, and it's something that gets your attention right away.
Yeah, well, that would seem that, so are you saying that, I guess, the drain pipes are actually one of the bigger pieces to look at when maybe buying a house rather than the incoming water?
Well, actually, I think they are. The drain pipes, in fact, if a house is over 50 years old, and especially we start talking in Seattle as an example, a lot of the houses are, 100 years old. If you're 50, 60, 70 years old and you aren't having somebody coming out to put a scope down your drains to check them out, you're making a big mistake, because plumbing problems that go out into the street, they typically start at about $13,000 because they're 14 feet down. Okay, so it's a big deal if you've got a cracked plumbing line.
So is this something that, I mean, if you're looking at a house, and somebody hires you to inspect a home, how are you, if this plumbing is 14 feet below, how do you look at it?
Well, I don't.
Oh.
I can't. Okay. That's where I'm going to recommend that somebody come in and scope it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load the system. Okay. I'm going to flush 300 to 500 gallons of water down that system while I'm there, fill up all the bathtubs all the way to their overflow drains, which I get a lot of those that are leaking, and all of a sudden you see water dripping down the light fixtures and stuff, which when I'm doing it, because we find it quickly, it's not a big deal. But the reason that I do it is because I don't want the new buyer to come home, have their kids playing in the bathtub, and an hour later come down and have the ceiling crash down. Okay, so a little bit of water, fresh water, is not a problem. It's never going to cause mold issues. It's always going to dry up easily. Okay, but the waste problems, those are big.
Yeah, we're here with Jim Estrada, owner and lead inspector with Property Inspector LLC. Jim, so is that a major problem in construction these days? I mean, the drain pipes being maybe not perfect? Or is it typically older construction that has more of the problems?
Well, I was just in a house the other day I thought was pretty interesting. They had just ripped out all of the plumbing and replaced it all, okay? But they did 85% of the work. They never strapped it at all. They had a couple of blocks sitting underneath it. So just the slightest little earthquake, it's going to tip all the pipes off the blocks, and they're all going to break. Okay, so just proper installation is the key, and then also the type of plumbing. And things in houses as a general rule, if we're talking 50s and back, 60s and back, we're talking old type drain pipes, old type of galvanized plumbing that are going to be up and coming issues.
It's a lot of water that's run through those.
Lots of water over the years.
So, are the codes different now than they were 50, 60 years ago? I mean, has there been large transitions in what's expected?
The overall, in terms of codes, really haven't changed a whole bunch. I mean, water runs downhill, so all of the basics.
Gravity is still a law, huh? It's for the same 60 years.
It is, no question about it. Probably the biggest thing is making sure that your venting for your sewer gases actually get out of the house and don't get trapped inside of the house because they are explosive. So that's really the big issue. But plumbing, yeah, it's been more materials and just kind of installation, not so much in terms of design. And then we've also been taking toilets as an example, and we used to be flushing 5 to 8 gallons of water down every time, and now we've gone pretty much to, you can't even buy a toilet like that anymore. You have to buy a low-volume toilet, which is 1.6 gallons. Some of them don't work very well. Some of them work great.
So is there maintenance that you'd recommend? I mean, I know you always have great ideas on maintenance. I mean, is there plumbing maintenance as a general standard? There
is some plumbing maintenance. One of the things that I always recommend to people is draining your hot water tank. Now in the Northwest, we don't have heavy calcium deposits, but draining that at least every other year, if not once a year, is just a great idea. A lot of times people talk about their water volume slowing down out of the hot water tank and stuff, and it's because it's clogged. Okay, when we clog things up. Also, just a simple thing when you're taking your garbage out. Almost everybody keeps their garbage cans underneath the sinks in the bathroom and in the kitchen and stuff. Take a minute every once in a while to actually just look underneath there and see if you're leaking underneath the sink.
It's hard to see under there when you have all those chemicals and cleaners, behind covering the drain.
That's the other issue, the amount of molds and things that I find on the walls back there because the cabinets are so stuffed that there's no air circulation. Okay, so keep things to a minimum.
So the fact that you have bleach in a squeeze bottle under there does not mean that bleach is killing the potential mold, huh?
No, exactly. The other thing you can do is. Of course, you can, if you're starting to get slow drains, a little vinegar, hot water will do that. A little bit of bleach oftentimes will unclog them. If there's a woman or two in the house with beautiful long hair, don't ever complain about it. Just unclog it once in a while. Okay. I mean, you can take the shower drains off. clean those out. You can take the P-traps off on the sinks and stuff, and that's just kind of what has to happen every once a year or every 2 years.
Just a lot of cleaning.
Going. Yeah, a lot of cleaning, keeping on top of stuff.
Sounds good. Well, Jim, thanks so much for joining us. We do have to go to break. That's Jim Estrada, owner and lead inspector of Property Inspector LLC. When we come back, Lisa Handren's going to join us again, and we'll be back after this break.